You have to wait for the last second. Okay, so I just want to refresh my memory about what we learned yesterday. Yesterday we learned that everybody would have to find their lulav, because the lulav nesher, because the first day it has to be lachem. That was the first thing the Mishnah said. The second thing the Mishnah said is that there's a new halacha that you're putter from bringing a korban chatas if you violated Shabbos b'shogeg, if it was in the course of doing a mitzvah, because it's called Ta'ah b'dvar mitzvah. Ta'ah b'dvar mitzvah is putter from a korban. So if the Gemara first gets into lachem, the Gemara teaches us about how much Rabbi Gamliel paid for his esrog. He paid 1,000 zuz. The Gemara spoke about whether or not there's a problem of tirda, because they used to hold their lulav all day because it meant so much to them, yet it wasn't a problem, even though you're not allowed to hold a sefer Torah and daven, you're allowed to hold your lulav and daven, because since you're doing a mitzvah, while you're holding it, we're not concerned that it'll divert your attention or that you'll drop it by mistake. We learned about the halacha of Ta'ah b'dvar mitzvah, and we learned that it only applies if you're doing a mitzvah. Now, even if you ended up not doing a mitzvah, for instance, in the case where the kohen ate the oil sa'if rather than the chatas sa'if, but he was intending to do a mitzvah, that would also pater him from a korban. But if he took animals from the room where they're not muvukar, where they're not checked, that's not considered Ta'ah b'dvar mitzvah, because he was negligent. He should have taken the animals from the room where they're pre-checked. And that takes us to the Mishnah and of Mem Beis Amud Aleph. Today's daf is Mem Beis. Now I'm going to try to finish as much as Mem Gimel as possible. So let's see what the Heilige Gemara says. Mekabelas Isha, the Heilige Mishnah. Mekabelas Isha miyad bina umiyad baila umachsirasei l'mayim b'Shabbos. So when the husband comes home from shul with his lulav on Shabbos, on those days where you're allowed to shake lulav on Shabbos, the wife who doesn't have the mitzvah of daled minim, she's allowed to take it from him. There's no problem of muksa for her, and she can put the lulav and esrog back into the water. Rashi tells us, "V'lo amrinan," we don't say kamataltla midi d'lo chazi. She is carrying something that to her is not useful, and therefore it's a muksa. Rabbi Yehuda says, "B'Shabbos machzirin." On Shabbos, you only can put it back. Yom Tov ma'asifin. On Yom Tov, you're even allowed to add water to the vase that you put it in. U'v'moed machlifin, and on Chol HaMoed, you must change the water. Rashi's mitzvah lahachal. It's a mitzvah to change the water. Katan hayedei l'naneya chayav b'lulav. Any katan that's old enough that he knows how to shake the lulav is chayav b'lulav. This teaches us a huge aside, and that is, you might ask, the mitzvah of lulav is just holding it. It's not shaking it. So why don't we give it to a katan, even if he can just hold it? Because this way, we'll be able to do the kind of mitzvah. So the Achronim teach us that you see from here that you're not mechuyev to be mechanech your child in a mitzvah until he's able to do the entire mitzvah b'shleimusa. If he can just do the bare minimum to be yotze, that doesn't make a child old enough to be mechayev b'chila. Why would you say that a woman won't be able to take the lulav and esrog from her husband and put it into the water on Shabbos? You might say, since she's not mechuyev in the mitzvah of lulav, because it's a mitzvah on grama, maybe she shouldn't be able to hold it and handle it either. Kamash malon, but she's allowed to. And Rashi says, right after the Mishnah, Kamash malon, keeping the royal and the tilas hanashim, since the lulav and esrog is usable for men, Torah is clear love. So now it's considered a keli, it's not muksa. There's no such thing as person-specific muksa. If it's a keli, if it's movable for anybody, umutar betultal lakoil, for everybody it's not muksa. So it sort of teaches us a little of halacha in hilchos muksa. There's no such thing as something that's muksa to you, but it's not muksa to me. If it's muksa for everybody. If anybody has benefit and can use it, and therefore it's not muksa for them, it will not be muksa for anybody. Zok tehela gemara. Zok tehela gemara. Katan hayodeya l'naneya. Tanur Katan hayodeya l'naneya chayiv lulav. A child who could shake his chayiv lulav, and Rashi says again lechanchoy midivreim. It's only a mitzvah of chinuch midrabanan. L'isatef, if he knows how to put on clothing, chayiv v'tzitzis. He'll be chayiv and tzitzis. Lishmor tefillin, if he's able to watch his tefillin. What does it mean to watch his tefillin? Zok Rashi shelo yikanis bahem lebeis hakisei. He knows that you're not allowed to go with your tefillin into an inappropriate place. So the halacha is aviv lokeach tefillin. The father has to buy him tefillin. So we have to point out that by tzitzis it doesn't say aviv lokeach tzitzis, but by tefillin it says aviv lokeach tefillin. And the difference is very simple, because you're not mechuyev in tzitzis unless you have a beged of four corners. So chayiv b'tzitzis if the child happens to have a beged of four corners. Not that we go and buy a special pair of tzitzis to wear. Be'etzim, there's no chiyuv to do that. Be'etzim, you're only mechuyev to put tzitzis on a beged if you happen to be wearing a beged of four corners. But tefillin is a mechuyev to go buy and put it on. So therefore, a child that's old enough to put on tefillin, to watch his tefillin, that is, the father has to buy him tefillin. How about Yidei Ladaber? Once a child knows how to speak, Aviv Malamdei Torah. The father teaches him Torah, Vikrishma and Krishma. What does the mean, Torah? Torah Mai. Amar Vamnuna, we teach him Torah, Tziva, Alon, and Moshe, Merasha, Kehilas Yaakov. The Shulchan Aruch Harav says that even though all chinuch is midrabanan, the mitzvah to teach your son Torah, that's a mitzvah deraisa. Krishma mai. What's the Krishma that you teach him? So to the more pasuk rishon, it's the pasuk rishon of Krishma is what you teach a child once he knows how to speak. And I forgot who the elephant spoke it out from, but one of the Achronim speak out that this is an extremely important yesod. The child, as soon as he understands the basics of Hashem, you teach him Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. The reason why that's so important is because that is the same Amunah Pshuta that an adult has to have. Amunah Pshuta is the simple knowledge that the Rebbeinu Shalom created the world and He is the whole world and everything's in His hands. That simple knowledge, the same knowledge that the child has to be as simple and as clear to an adult. Hayudei Lishmor Gufay. What if someone knows, a child knows, to be careful that his body shouldn't touch tumah? And right, tumas maga umasa v'oil. So a child knows to be careful not to touch with his body anything that's tamei, or even with his hands, not to touch anything that's tamei, not to carry anything that's tamei, or not to walk into an oil. If a child has that knowledge, oichlin al gufay taharis, then even if something touched his body, food touched his body, which truma, and touched his body, the kohen will be allowed to eat it, because we'll assume that it's still tahar, because this child knows to be careful. Now we know when you touch something, there's a gzeir d'Rabbanan that anything you touch with your hand is tummy unless you wash your hands with it, because they're more susceptible to tumah because people are always touching things. So in order for us to say that if he touches something, he touches some truma, the kohen can still eat it. That needs a higher level of shmira. So if he just knows not to become tamei, then if truma touches his body other than his hands, a kohen would be allowed to eat it. In other words, we would say that the truma remained tahor. But for him to be able to touch something with his hands and allow the kohen to eat it, that requires a higher level of maturity. Lishmar siyadav, if he knows to watch his hands and always to wash his hands, and if he's mesiach das to wash his hands again, then oichel al yadav tahires. Then you can even eat tahiris that he touched. If a child is old enough that you can ask him, did that shirt touch that fruit? And he'll be able to answer you. Rashi says, "Shem shoyel noisai nagata betumazu." You can ask him, did you touch that shirt? And Yodei lahashiv, and he's mature enough to be able to answer, "Hey, no love," or "Hey, you there." You can answer, "I did touch it, I didn't touch it, or I don't remember if I touched it." or I wasn't sure about that. So as long as he's someone that you can ask, then Rishus HaYachid Tzvekei Tamei. In any Safek Tamei that he encounters, Rishus HaYachid is Tamei. There's a rule. Safek Tamei, Rishus HaYachid Tzvekei Tamei, and Safek Tamei, Rishus HaRabim Tzvekei Tahar. And this is a Gzeres HaKosav. We learn it from Saita. A Saita is a Safek Tamei. We don't know what happened in the room when they were enclosed, and we assume she's Tamei. Rishus HaRabim, but if there's a Safek Tamei that occurs in Rishus HaRabim, Tzvekei Tahar. So the answer would be, the case would be a very simple case. You have Paris there, let's say Paris in the Rishus HaRabim, and you're not sure if a mouse touched it or not. Now you cannot ask the mouse. The mouse you can't ask. Oh, I'm sorry, I was mistaken. If it's any day l'shoel, even if it's in Rishus HaYachid, if you had Paris in Rishus HaYachid, and you're not sure if the mouse touched those Paris, a mouse is any day l'shoel. You can't ask the mouse unless it's Mendel the mouse or Mickey the mouse. You can't ask him, did you touch the Paris? So if it's something that's any day l'Israel, then it's always Safek Torah. But if it's your day l'Israel, if you can ask the child, did the mouse touch the pears? But if you touch the mouse, there, if that Safek occurs in your Rishus HaYachid, it's Tamei. But if that Safek occurred in Rishus HaRabim, it'll be Torah. Hayidel first couple, a kohen who's old enough that he knows how to do him. Cholkin like truma be based on grammars. You can actually give him truma if he goes to the geirin, if he goes to the storage area where people have truma, where people are distributing truma, they can get online and also take a portion of the truma. Rashi tells us that this is speaking by a child who is bar mitzvah already. So let's see Rashi. But before he's duchening and everyone sees that he's duchening, you're not allowed to give him truma. But if this child we can trust that will eat the truma, now he can't be given the truma publicly for everyone to see, but he still is allowed to get truma. And the Rashi speaks out. The reason why you can't give him is because it's ein cholken lahem shebizoyin truma. It's a bizoyin for the truma to give it to someone who is perceived to be someone who's a child who's not able to watch it properly. She'ein kol royav yoydim by shubakal l'shayma. If in public truma is being distributed to a child that people don't know about him, that he'll be able to watch the truma properly, it's a bizoyin for the truma. However, once he's duchening in public, they already look at him differently, and they'll say, "Oh, he must be mature enough and old enough to watch the truma," and therefore there's no problem giving him the truma in public. But if you know that this child can watch the truma, yet this child is not duchening yet, then you could send it to the child privately, but it shouldn't be done in public. Now, what does Rashi tell us? How old is this child? Look, Rashi Mushidei Liferis Kabav Uparish Betzibur Hakal Yoidim Shehevi Shtei Sayus. She'ain Cotton Paris Kabav, a cotton cannot duchen. So one of the items that Rashi says here is Yodei Liferis Kabav means you know he's at least bar mitzvah. If it's public knowledge that this child is bar mitzvah, then you're allowed to send it to him. You're allowed to give it to him in public. But even though he's a cotton and he's not bar mitzvah yet, but he knows how to be careful with truma, you could give it to him not in public. Tosfos argues, and Tosfos says we're talking about a cotton here, and a cotton by himself wouldn't duchen. True, but a cotton would duchen standing near his father. So if the child was seen duchening near his father, even though he's a cotton, you'd still give him truma. So that's an important machloikis Rashi and Tosfos. Dr. Gemara Viter at the top of Membeis and Membeis. If a child knows how to shech, and Rashi says it doesn't mean he knows all the halacha shchita. He knows how to do the job. He knows how to do it. Even though he didn't learn it Yordeya, but he knows at least what to do. Then you'd be allowed to eat from his shchita. And Tosfos points out something very important. Is la'amin yadav l'shchita. If he knows how to do it, even though he doesn't know the halachas, like Rafuna will tell us shortly, If the child knows what to do, he just doesn't know the halachas. If someone is supervising him and can attest to the fact that he did it properly, then you can eat from his shchita. But it's mashma. If he doesn't know how to do it, even though someone supervised him and could tell us that this child did it properly, the first thing is you got to know what you're doing. You got to know how to do the action. And there's a very famous story. The Rivnitzer Rebbe Zatzal used to be a model. He used to model children. As a matter of fact, my uncle was very close to him. And when my youngest brother, Moshe, was born, my uncle asked my father, would you like me to ask the Rebbe if he wants to come be your son's model? So my father said, sure, the Rebbe should be my son's model. It's such a big schos. So they asked the Rebbe, yeah, I'm coming to Toronto to be the model. And then when my father told people that the model would be the Rivnitzer Rebbe, they told him, are you crazy? His hand shakes. He can't, it's dangerous. He can't model it. So my father told my uncle, maybe tell the Rebbe not to come. So that was very uncomfortable for my uncle to go into the Rivnitzer Rebbe and tell him not to come. So he went in and told the Rebbe, das Kind is gale, the child is yellow. So the Rebbe said, Yosef, das Kind is gale wie ich bin green. The baby is yellow like I'm green. I know what happened. Just tell them to name the baby after my father. And that's where my brother's name Moshe came from. He's named after Chaim Zabel, but of Moshe, he's named after that Moshe. So there's a famous story with the Satmar Rebbe. And the Satmar Rebbe went over to the Rivnitzer Rebbe trying to encourage him not to be a moil anymore because his hand was shaky. And he said to the Rebbe, do you know, weißt ihr, as ich bin auch a moil? The Satmar Rebbe said, I'm also a moil. So the Rivnitzer Rebbe told me, yeah, the Rebbe is a moil, nu favus maletunish. So then why don't you do brisses? So the Satmar Rebbe answered, weil ich kenn nicht, because I just can't. In other words, hint. So it's the same thing here at Shchita. If you don't have a good hand and you can't do it, you're not allowed to shecht, even though someone's watching you, and even though it happens to be that it would work, it's not a kosher shchita. How about yochel lechel kazayis dogam? If a child is old enough that he can eat a kazayis of something made out of wheat, so he can eat like an adult, at that point we say that what he will excrete from his body is now smelly. And therefore, from then on, you're not allowed to do a davar shemdush, you're not allowed to daven the krishma within 4 amas of his excretions. However, a baby younger than that you don't have to stay away, dalar amas, from their toilet. That's only if a child can eat a little bit of wheat at a time. That doesn't mean anything. The child has to be developed enough that it can eat the kazayis dogam b'chteichelis pras. And if it's an adult, even if the gadol cannot eat so much in such a small period of time, a gadol automatically, whatever comes out of him smells. The more someone knows, Yosef Mechai, the more problems they have. Someone who's informed from the internet is more problematic than someone who's not informed at all. Yochel lechel kazayis sleep. What if a child is mature enough that he can eat a kazayis of sleep? And Rash and Tosfos tells us that eating cooked foods is easier, it's softer. Eating tzli, you need to be a little bit older to be able to eat tzli. Sheichten Lulav as a Pesach, you can include this child in a group of people who are eating the Korban Pesach. Shenemar ish leviachle, all according to how much they can eat. However, it's brought down from the Rishonim that you should not include a child in a group of only children. The group can have some children, but it shouldn't be a group of only children. The child has to be old enough not just to be able to chew, but to know what's food and what's not. Ketzat, if you give the child a piece of wood, a toothpick, the child will not eat it, he'll throw it away. Egos, but if you give them enough, they'll eat it. We know all little children, they put everything into their mouth. So once the child is old enough to know what's food and what's not, only then are you allowed to include them in the Korban Pesach. What a beautiful parent this was. Zok the Heilige Gemara weiter. Okay, Heilige Mishnah. Lulav Arava Shisha. The Lulav and the Arava, you could use them, make in Tila, either 6 days or Bishiva, or 7 days. And it'll depend on what day of Sukkot Shabbos fell out on. The Mishnah is going to elaborate shortly. Halal v'simcha, Halal and Simcha, Ishmoina, all 8 days of Sukkot, including Shmini Atzeres, you say Halal and you have Simcha. Rashi says Simcha means to eat basar shlomim. However, Tosfos says that there are many times that you don't eat a shlomim every day, because if the week works out that Yom Tov is on a Sunday, you won't be able to shech the chagiga the day before. You won't be able to shech the shlomim the day before. So you're going to end up missing one night of being able to eat shlomim. So Tosfos says the simcha also means, in addition to shlomim, Tosfos says it means ksus nikia uviyayin yosem. The mitzvah of simcha not only includes eating the carbon shlomim, but it also includes wearing clean clothing and drinking wine. Okay? Zogt Gemara weiter. Sukka v'nisach hamayim, Shiva, the mitzvah to sit in the sukkah, and the mitzvah of nisach hamayim on the mizbech is 7 days. Hachalil, the mitzvah to blow the flute, in other words, to play musical instruments on sukkahs, is chamisha v'shisha, because you cannot blow the chalil on Yom Tov, nor can you blow it on Shabbos. So if the first day of Yom Tov is Shabbos, then you end up being able to play instruments for 6 days. But if the first day is not Shabbos, then you lose 2 days. You lose the first day and you lose Shabbos. Now the Mishnah elaborates. Lulav Shiva. Ketzad. How is it, what type of arrangement of Yom Tov will there be for the Lulav to be shook in 7 days? Yom Tov Rishon Shel Chag Shechol Yesh B'Shabbos. If the first day of Yom Tov falls out on Shabbos, which that day Lulav is Doichet Shabbos, then Lulav Shiva. Then you'll be able to take the Lulav 7 days. But for Shar Kol Yomim, if Shabbos was on any other day of Sukkot, or if the first day of Sukkot was any other day besides Shabbos, Shisha, you'll end up only being able to be noitel to Lulav 6 days, because one of the other days will be Shabbos and one of the other days will not be Doichet Shabbos. Arava Shiva. The Arava also, you could be noitel 7 days. Ketzad, how does that work out? That is the Yom HaShvi Shel Arava Shechal Yosh B'Shabbos. If a Shana Rabbah falls out on Shabbos, then you would be noitel to Arava even on Shabbos, Arava Shiva. The Shar Kol Yomim Shisha. But if any other day, if a Shana Rabbah falls out on any other day besides Shabbos, then that day you wouldn't take the Shabbos. The Gemara is going to elaborate on the mitzvah of Shabbos. Mitzvah Lulav Ketzad. Let's analyze how the mitzvah Lulav works. Yom Tov Rishon Shel Chag Shechol Yesh B'Shabbos. If the first day of Sukkot fell out on Shabbos, so in the Beis Hamikdash, Me'lichin Lulaveim Lahar Bayis. Before Shabbos, everyone would bring their lulav to Har Bayis. V'Hachazanim Mekabel Mehem. I guess the Gaboyim who worked in the Beis Hamikdash took the lulavim and esrogim from all the guests. The Soid V'Noison Al Gabi Itztava, and they set them up on these benches. Now around the Beis Hamikdash in Har Bayis, there were a series of benches where people can sit and rest, and these benches actually had coverings to them. They had shades. So when you were sitting in them, you were actually protected from the sun. So the Al Gabi Itztava, they put them on these benches. Now, the Zakanim, the older people, they didn't want to put theirs where the public was, because it would be hard for them, the pushing and shoving, to get their Lovim and Esrogim. So the Zakanim had special VIP service. It's like when you go on a plane. If you're the riffraff, you have to put your clothing in the overhead bin, and then you fight like cats and dogs to find a place in the overhead bin where you can put your suitcase, and then you got to fight to get it off when the plane lands. If you fly first class, as soon as you walk in, sir, let me take that for you. And they take it and they put it in the special cabinet that's in the front of the plane. And then when you leave, they say, sir, can I give you your suit back? So that's how it was. The Zakanim, they got VIP service. Now, when they come back on Shabbos to pick up their Lulavim and Esrogim, what if by mistake you get the wrong one? Then it's not going to be Lachem. So therefore, we train the whole tzibur to say, Kol Misha Megia Lulavim Liadoi. If by any chance anybody else ends up with my Lulav, referring to the whole Arba Minim, I'm giving it to him as a gift. This way, everyone will be Makayim B'lachem. L'machar, so when they come back on Shabbos, Mashkimin Uvain, everybody comes early. Chazanim Zorkin Oisan Lefneim, the Chazan, the Gabayim would put out the Lulavim in front of everybody. They mechatfen, and such a chatin darten, they were chapping and pushing and shoving. Umakin ishesh chaverai, and then they would push and shove and hit each other. It got out of hand. Once Bezin saw that this is getting out of hand, then he said, you should do it at home, because we didn't want this sakana to happen. As the Hershel Telebam used to always say, davening can be in the hang. Amai, what is the problem? What is the problem with using a lulav on Shabbos? Even if Shabbos ends up being the second, third, or fourth, or fifth day of Sukkot, why can't you be noitul your lulav in the base of Mikdash? It's a mitzvah d'oraisa. Do it on Shabbos. The litche Shabbos, let it be doiche Shabbos. Muktzah is only midrabanan. Now you might want to ask a question. Ein shvus b'mikdash. The Gemara doesn't ask that. Why isn't it there ein shvus b'mikdash? So the answer to that is that the only time you say ein shvus b'mikdash is a shvus as a rabbanon that's related directly to the avodah. But if it's not directly related to the avodah, you don't say ein shvus b'mikdash. Here the question is, you have a mitzvah to say, why shouldn't it be doicha a mitzvah derabbanon, a gzer derabbanon? Amar Rabba, Zok Rabba. We're afraid that you might come to be over at the Raisa, because you might not know precisely how to do this mitzvah, and we're afraid you're going to take your lulav and esrog, and you're going to go Dalet Amos B'Shus HaRabbim to take it to a Rebbe to teach you what to do, and because we're afraid that one person will come to be over this deraisa, we ask nobody to shake lulav. We have Reinu Dalet Amos B'Shus HaRabbim. The Hainu time of the shofar, and that's the reason why we don't blow shofar on Shabbos. The Hainu time of the Megillah, and that's the reason why we don't lay the Megillah on Shabbos. It's all because we're afraid one person might be over the Raisa. For that, we all refrain from doing the mitzvah. That's how much we care about each other to prevent each other from doing the mitzvah. Frank the Gemara, Ihachi, Yom Rishon Nami. So Oibezoi, the first day as well, we should not let you shake the lulav if the first day is Shabbos. You have the same gzera. You have it more even, because by the second or third day, you would expect people know what to do already. It's up to Gemara, Rishon who did the Kinula Rabbanon, Ihachi Yom Rishon Nami. What is the problem with Yom Rishon? We already said in the Mishnah that you no longer bring it to the Beis Hamikdash. You actually do shake lulav at home. So don't ask me make the takana for the first day not to be night to lulav. They've already mitigated that concern because they told people to do it at home. So tomorrow, hateinich acher takana. Sure, after they made that takana, which they didn't make for this reason, they made it because people were pushing and shoving. I understand there's no problem anymore of someone taking it outside to a chol. But kodim takana ma'ikal meimar. Before the takana of everyone on the first day shaking their lulav at home, before that takana, on the first day it was doicha Shabbos, and on all the other days it wasn't doicha Shabbos. Why the distinction? Why is the first day different? Elo Zok the Gemara. Rishon the Isay Min HaTorah B'Gvulin on the first day of Yom Tov, with the mitzvah deraisa, not only to shake lulav in the Beis Hamikdash, but also to shake lulav everywhere in the world. There, Loi Gazru Rabbanon. There, the Rabbanon decided not to make any gzeira at all. Zok Rashi, Loi Gazru Rabbanon, Loi B'Gvulin V'Loi B'Mikdash. In other words, on the first day, where there's a mitzvah deraisa, even begvulin, it's doicha Shabbos. Now, of course, we know that we live begvulin, and we don't take our lulav on Shabbos, even if it's the first day. So we're going to have to see the maskana of the Gemara. But at this point, the Gemara is saying that they didn't make any gzeira begvulin, which means on the first day of Yom Tov, where there's a mitzvah deraisa to shake lulav, wherever you are, they were not gozer at all. But but the rest of the days of Sukkot after the first day, the less new minatayr bigvulin. There is no mitzvah deraisa to shake lulav bigvulin. Therefore, gozu b'rabbanan. Therefore, they were gozer even in the Beis Hamikdash, not the shake lulav. And let's see Rashi again. About shar hayomim she'enim minatayra. The rest of the days that are not midaraisa b'gvulin ela b'mikdash are only deraisa in the mikdash. Loy chashiva netila dedu. The mitzvah of netila is not as severe because on those days it doesn't apply b'gvulin, and therefore b'gozer b'rabbanan even in the Beis Hamikdash you should chomer the Shabbos af b'mikdash. So Rashi asks, how could Bezdin tell you not to do a mitzvah deraisa? The timer nimtu Bezdin masnin laker davar minatayra. The Gemara and the Rashi and Yevamos, we already answered this. Vishanin and shev al tasa shiny. The Rabbanim are not allowed to tell you to do an avera, but they are allowed to tell you to refrain from doing a mitzvah. So here's the logic: where even the gvul and it's minatayra, we won't be geyser b'mikdash, but where we won't be geyser b'mikdash or b'gvul. But where it's not the gvul minatayra, then we're geyser b'gvul and we're geyser b'mikdash. Zok to Gemara, ihachi. If that's the case, ha'idna nami. Nowadays, we should also shake lulav on the first day of Yom Tov, even if it's Shabbos, because we're b'gvulin. There's a din deraisa b'gvul to shake the lulav. So why don't we shake the lulav on Shabbos nowadays? The reason why we don't shake the lulav nowadays on Shabbos the first day is anan lo yedina b'kivu diarcha. Since we don't know exactly which day is the first day, now that we have calendars, we do know, but we still base our halachas on not knowing. So we can't afford to shake the lulav the first day on Shabbos because maybe today is Shabbos, but maybe it's not Sukkot at all, and then we're talking not allowed to shake. So since we don't really know that today is the first day of Yom Tov, therefore we're not going to shake lulav on the first day of Yom Tov if it's Shabbos. Correct the Gemara, but inu the yadi b'kavu di'acha litchu in Eretz Yisrael, why don't they shake lulav on the first day of Sukkot if it comes out on Shabbos? And we know they don't. So tomorrow, they do. They do. The Gemara here, of course, this is not the Maskon of the Gemara. The Gemara here says that in Eretz Yisrael, you're going to shake your lulav on the first day of Yom Tov, even though it's Shabbos. The Tanya we learned, the Tanya Chada, we know one brayso that says, Yom Tov Arishan Shal Chag Shechal Yois B'Shabbos, Kol Al Ma'lichanes L'Levem Lahar Bayis. Well, clearly that's when the Beis Hamikdash was standing. The Tanya Idach, and we have another brayso that says, L'Beis HaKnesses. You took it to the Beis HaKnesses. Shemamina, you see them here, Kam Bizman Shebeis Hamikdash Kaim. The Har Bayis was when the Beis Hamikdash was Kaim. Kam Bizman Shein Beis Hamikdash Kaim. And the Mishnah that says the Beis HaKnesses was referring to when the Beis Hamikdash wasn't Kaim, but you're in Eretz Yisrael, and it'll be Doicha Shabbos, and therefore even on Shabbos on the first day, you'll bring your lulav to shul. Shmamina. So at this point in the Gemara, which is not the Maskana, of course, the Gemara holds that nowadays in Eretz Yisrael, even if the first day of Sukkot is Shabbos, they will shake the lulav. But here in the Chutz La'aretz, if the first day is Shabbos, you don't shake the lulav. The Gemara is going to retract from that soon, but that's where we're holding at this stage in the Gemara. So the Gemara, the Isam in Torah Begvul Minala. This whole teretz was based on the fact that since on the first day of Sukkot, there's a mitzvah d'oraisa to shake lulav, even Chutz La'aretz, even Begvulin. Therefore, we're not going to be geyser. We're not going to be geyser, and we'll allow you to shake on Shabbos. Well, where do you see in the Torah that there's a mitzvah d'oraisa to shake the lulav on the first day of Begvulin? The Tanya we look in the Brayso. Everybody has to have the lulav, lachem, which is mishalachem. It has to be yours. We had already analyzed this first part of the Brayso, but now we're getting into more information. Bayoim va'afilu b'Shabbos. Bayoim is afilu b'Shabbos, and Rishon afilu b'Gvul. It says Bayoim Rishon, the first day. It doesn't specify where, so Pashas, it means everywhere, which is how Rashi learns. Rashi learns Rishon afilu b'Gvulin, lav mirabuya darish. Ela v'lakachtem lachem Bayoim Rishon v'loy pirish mikdash. It just says, the pasuk just says generally, take the first day. It doesn't say where. It means everywhere. Tosis argues. Harishon. What do you learn from the hay of Harishon? It teaches you that it's not doicha Shabbos. Lulav is not doicha Shabbos only on the first day. So from here you know that on the first day there's a mitzvah d'oraisa to shake lulav, and even the first day. So Zok to Gemara, Amar Mar. Let's analyze this price. It's very interesting. This price. The Yom Vafilu b'Shabbos. The Torah is teaching you that the Yom Rishon, even on Shabbos, you have to shake lulav. Why would the Torah need to tell us special that you have to shake lulav even on Shabbos? Why would I think otherwise? There's no malach involved. Michti. Tiltol ba'almahu. The only isser that could possibly be involved in shaking lulav is an isser d'rabbanan of muksa. Gemara, itzrich kra the mishra tiltol. You need a pasuk to tell you that you could ignore the isser muksa on the lulav. The isser muksa wasn't even in existence yet when the Torah was written. That was added later. The rabbanan added. So why would the Torah need to tell you a word by Yom Rishon that you're allowed to violate the isser muksa in order to be makai in the mitzvah of lulav? That can't be true. It's going to teach us that, let's say you didn't even cut your lulav yet from the tree. You're allowed to, on Yom Tov, on Shabbos, cut the lulav down from the tree, which is a malacha d'oraisa. And not everybody holds like that. The Tanya we learned, lulav v'chol machshira, a lulav, and any d'oraisa that you need to do to prepare that lulav, to cut it, to tie it. Doichen is a Shabbos will be doichen Shabbos. Divrei Rebbe Eliezer of all machshira mitzvah are doichen Shabbos. My time with Rebbe Eliezer, Amar Kra, the Yom Vafilu b'Shabbos. And that's what he learned from this B'Yom Rishon. The Rabbanan hold that you're only allowed to do machshira mitzvah on Shabbos if it was necessary. If you couldn't have done them before. But if you were able to do them before, you cannot do machshira mitzvah. So Avada, you would not be allowed to cut a lulav down on Shabbos. So what does he learn from the B'Yom Rishon? To teach you that the mitzvah of lulav only applies by day, it doesn't apply by night. How does Rabbi Eliezer know that there's no mitzvah of lulav by night? He learns it from the end of the puzzle. It says, and Rashi learns that simcha is also going on the mitzvah of shaking the lulav and esrog. And we learn yomim v'loy leilos. Rabbanan. What about Rabbanan? They don't learn it from there because they learn it from Bayoim. Imay hasam hava mina leilav yomim misukka. If you wouldn't be able to learn it from that pasuk of Samachtam with Hashem Elokechem Shivas Yomim, because you would learn the word yomim from the sukkah where it says Basukah Shteisu Shivas Yomim. And I would say Mal Alon Yomim Bafilu Leilos. We know the mitzvah of sukkah applies even by night. We sleep in the sukkah. Afkanami, so too maybe the yomim that it says by Arba Minim is also yomim Bafilu Leilos. Therefore, it has to say by Yom Rishon to teach you that there's only a mitzvah of Arba Minim during the day. And how do we know that there's a mitzvah of sukkah day and night? Maybe the mitzvah of sukkah is only to be the sukkah by day. The Tanur Rabban, the sukkah stays with Shivas Yomim. Yomim Bafilu Leilos. Ata Aimer Yomim Bafilu Leilos. You say it includes the nights. Maybe it's the days and there's no mitzvah of sukkah at night. They didn't know. And there's a good argument to suggest that the mitzvah of sukkah shouldn't apply by night. Nemar kain yomim, the nemar belulav yomim. And it says by lulav, l'kachtam l'chem b'yom rishon, or shmachtu l'fnei Hashem l'kechem shivas yomim, mal alon yomim v'loy leilos. Just like by the lulav, we say it only applies by day, not by night. Maybe afkan, maybe the mitzvah of sukkah also applies to yomim v'loy leilos. Or maybe don't learn sukkah from lulav. Maybe learn sukkah from the shivas yimei hameluyim. Nemer kan yomim, and nemer beluyim yomim. And what it says there is that you had to remain at the Oyel Moed for 7 days. I'm going to read the passage with Pesach Oyel Moed, lo seitu shivas yomim ad yoim meloy shimei miluayim. So you have to stay there for 7 days. And there it meant 7 days and 7 nights. You weren't allowed to leave at night. It's just like by the Malum, they had to remain there day and night. So what is sukkah more comparable to? Is it more comparable to lulav, or is it more comparable to milui? Let's learn the mitzvah of sukkah, which applies all day, to miluyim, which applies all day. But don't use the lulav. There's no mitzvah to do lulav in the whole day. You shake it once and you're yotze the mitzvah. So therefore, don't bring a raya from there to sukkah, which applies at least the whole day. So therefore, we'll compare sukkah to miluyim to say it applies by night as well. Or maybe look at it from a different perspective. Sukkah is a mitzvah that's going to be forever. Lulav is a mitzvah that's going to be forever. The miluyim was a one-time deal. That's why the pasuk says teishvu, l'gzeira shava. Never kam teishvu, but sukkahs teishvu shiva shamim, and never by miluyim teishvu. And it says by miluyim, the lashon teishvu, it says upesach almai teishvu. So it says lima teishvu l'gzeira shava. Never kam teishvu, but never by miluyim teishvu. So Allah Lamaisa, how do we know that the mitzvah of sukkah is by night as well? We know because we have Gzer Shava and Miluyim, we're meant day and night. And how do we know that the lulav is only by day? It says Lakat L'Muchem by Yoim. That was according to one sheet. Arava Shiva Ketzah. The Arava you keep for 7 days. You shake normally 7 days. You don't shake to make the tila. We'll see what exactly gets done. Arava B'Shvi, my time is Achi Shabbos. Why is it that there's no special mitzvah of Arava on Hoshana Rabbah? Why is it that it's Doicha Shabbos Davke if Hoshana Rabbah falls on Shabbos, but not if it doesn't fall on any other day? We wanted to create one day where it'll be Doicha Shabbos, even though we have a Gzeira. Why? We don't want people doing these things on Shabbos because of these Gzeiras, but at least one day of the week we wanted to do it on Shabbos, so that everybody will know that it's Daraisa. Why would I think otherwise? So Rashi says, it doesn't say like by Lulav, it doesn't say that. We learn it out of drushes that there's a mitzvah to be noitel on a rava. But since it's not open in the Torah, Rabbanan wanted to allow it to be Deicha Shabbos at least one day of Sukkot, so people should know that the mitzvah of a rav is the rest. In fact, tomorrow, ihachi lulav nami litche kidei lefarsimoi shehu minatayah. So why don't we allow you to take the lulav on other days as well, so that everyone should know it's from the Torah? So tomorrow, lulav gzeir mishum derabah. The reason why lulav we don't allow you to do the mitzvah lulav if any other day falls on Shabbos besides the first day was Gzer of Rabbah. Why aren't we going by a Rabbah as well? The Gzer of Rabbah, that someone might carry it to learn how to do it. So tomorrow, a Rabbah shluchei bezdin ma'isi. By a Rabbah, there's no problem at all of Rabbah that someone might go to learn what to do. You know why? Because the mitzvah of a Rabbah is not on the individual. The mitzvah of a Rabbah is on the shluchei bezdin. And Rashi explains what that means. Rashi shluchei bezdin ma'isi me'erev Shabbos. First of all, they'll bring it from Erev Shabbos. Ulamachras ain't a mitzvah l'chol adam. On Shabbos, it's not a mitzvah for everybody. Or any day, there's not a mitzvah for everybody to take an arav and shake it. The mitzvah was only the kaihanim went around the mizbeach with. So there's no problem. But lulav l'chol masur. Everybody has to shake lulav. Therefore, we have rabbis concerned that someone might go learn. If you're telling me that a rav is something that's not done by an individual, it's only done by the kaihanim, where there's no concern that it'll come to Achil Shabbos, so why don't you say that no matter what day of Sukkot falls out on Shabbos, the rav should be done? Because there's no concern that something wrong could happen. So tomorrow, because Asi Lefik Belulav, it's going to create a zilzal in the lulav. Lulav is only Doicha Shabbos one day. A Rav is Doicha Shabbos no matter what day of the Sukkot it is. It's going to make Lulav look like an inferior mitzvah. It's not covered. So therefore, we'll only allow a Rav to be Doicha Shabbos one day because the Lulav is only Doicha Shabbos one day. Okay, if it's one day, why did you pick day 7? The Why don't we say that the mitzvah of a Rabbah will be Doicha Shabbos if Shabbos falls out on the first day, just like Lulav? Why pick a different day? So that tomorrow, that wouldn't prove that there's something significant about the Arava. Amri Lulav hu de Kadachi. They'll say that the Lulav is Doicha and the Arava is only Agav Orcha, Agav the Lulav. We needed to give the Arava its own distinction, its own day where it's Doicha. And the Lulav is not, so that people will see that Arava itself is also a Choshev Gemara. So why did it have to be day 7? Why couldn't it be any of the other days? Why did you pick day 7? So tomorrow, even the Kamaf Pislami Rishon, Ukma Shvi, once we not do it, the first day would be the most appropriate day. But there's a reason why we can't do it the first day, because there's no distinction from Lulav. So to pick any other day is not so defined, we push it to the last day. So why nowadays, if a Shana Rabbah falls out on Shabbos, why aren't we doiche Shabbos and take the Shana? So tomorrow, does anybody know what happens if a Shana Rabbah falls out on Shabbos? The answer is a Shana Rabbah never falls out on Shabbos. But the Gemara is asking, so tomorrow, Anan lo yadinon b'kibud yarcha. We don't know our calendar, so today might not be a Shana Rabbah. So therefore, nowadays we don't take the Rabbah on Shabbos. Even if a Shana Rabbah is on Shabbos, but in Eretz Yisrael, the other b'kibud yarcha litchi. So how come for them a Shana Rabbah is not Doicha Shabbos? So to Murky, Asher Behedya Amar Lo Yitla. Behedya said we always make it that the Shana Rabbah should never fall out on Shabbos. And Tosfos says, how do you do that? You do that by adding an extra day. Actually, let's see Rashi. Lo Yikla, Hema Abramis Elul, they'll add a day to Elul, or Echad Min HaChadashim, or one of the other months, Kisharoyin Sheyer Shvi B'Shabbos. If they calculate based on the typical expectations that the Shana Rabbah is going to fall out on Shabbos, they'll add a day to Elul, or to one of the earlier months, so that it pushes it up. He also Rabban B'chol Chusay. When Rabban came and all the other people that travel, we have to stop here at 6:54. So we'll stop here, and the Midshem will be Mamshech tomorrow. Everybody have a wonderful, wonderful day. We're going to learn all about Aravis. It's a very Geshmaka Gemara.
Yosy, what day did you say you won't be?
I'm not going to be on Erev Shabbos, and I'm not going to be here on Shabbos. So I want to try to get ahead so that even if we don't Erev Shabbos, and we don't on Shabbos, and we don't Motzei Shabbos, and we just on Sunday, we'll still be okay. So I'm almost one full blot ahead. Tomorrow I'll try to push off. If we're over a blot ahead, then on Sunday we'll be less than a blot behind, and then we'll be able to catch up.